High School. Are we ready?
How do we move on? Oh, okay.
On behalf of Mr. Malaga, on behalf of Chapel Hill High School, and Jackie Ellis, I'd like to welcome all of you to probably one of the most interesting and exciting history classes we've ever had in this school. As you all know, this class is about the December 7th, 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor. And as a lot of history, as time goes by, people tend to kind of forget about it or recede into the background. And I think what Mr. Malaga is doing, which he does in a lot of his classes, he is trying to make this real. He's trying to keep these memories alive, and certainly the sacrifices that all of our soldiers and sailors and Marines in that generation did to keep the world free. So I think it's a pretty amazing thing he's able to do. Hopefully it kindles more interest in this, what some have called the greatest generation. Mr. Malaga wanted me to give a special thanks to the Chapel Hill Historical Society and the Public School Foundation for making this possible. Without this grant, it certainly wouldn't have happened. Take a few liberties and tell you a little bit about Mr. Malaga for just a minute. And most of you have had it as students know all this is very true. There are a lot of qualities in a good teacher, and Mr. Malaga certainly demonstrates a heck of a lot of excellent qualities for a history teacher. And just to, without belaboring the point, if you've had him for class, you know he loves history. And he talks about it all the time. He tells me stories and other teachers. So a love of history is a very important characteristic of who is a history teacher. Mr. Malaga relates exceptionally well with his students. And when you relate well with your students, you connect with your students, and when you connect with them, they tend to learn. He also is very good at telling stories, and that is an understatement. It's hard to keep him from telling stories. But the reality is, history is nothing more than a very long, incredibly fascinating concept complex story, and he does an excellent job of sharing that story with all of his students and a lot of his peers. Mr. Malega also works very hard to make history relevant. And a lot of his stories are trying to make students see the connection between something that happened ago and something that's going on today. And I have to say, he and I, along with Kelly Thomas, who used to teach here, have taken students on trips. We've seen Dachau and Pompeii and Florence and the Acropolis, and we've been to Petersburg and Battlefield and Gettysburg and Antietam. And for those of you who've been in this class, you know what I'm talking about. The one thing Mr. Malega always wants to do is to bring the story home to his students. Therefore, he always has a video camera. And in his video camera, when you see the pictures, is his finger. He is constantly videotaping things and going, and here's where this happened, and then they went over here. And so I see this as the ultimate finger in the TV screen. In that rather than pointing stuff out, you're going to be there and you're going to meet the two actual survivors and actually see the memorials at Pearl Harbor. And I can't imagine making it much more real than being there yourself, which is what I'm sure you would love. On that note, welcome again. You've seen the schedule on the board, and we're ready to go. Thank you very much.
Well, we'd like to take this time to say aloha to the Chapel Hill High School community and its community members. And, my name is Brianna Holler-Waddell, and I'm the Education Director for the Arizona Memorial Museum Association. And today, as you know, you'll be participating in our Witness to History's Pearl Harbor Survivor Series. The Witness to History program is sponsored by the National Park Service, the Arizona Memorial Museum Association, and the United States Navy. These three organizations will all have a vested interest in preserving the events and deeds of December 7, 1941. Today you'll be hearing from two World War II survivors, Mr. Bob Kinsler, U.S. Army retired, and Mr. Sterling Kale, who also U.S. Army retired. However, on December 7th, he was attached to the United States Navy. Before we hear these gentlemen's experience, I'd like to turn it back over to your teacher, Mr. Bill Malega, so he can give you a short mini lesson.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a little thanks for clapping. I want you guys to know at 4:30 I was averaging your grades this morning, and the last grade is your participation in this program, so with those claps you might have got a few bonus points. I'm glad you're all here. I just want to say to Riley, when you come up, you and Mr. Weidel, be sure to take off those hats and be respectful. I can see you right there in front. There you go, sir. So, all right, I love that red hair. I'm going to do a quick lesson on what happened, and I think the stars of our show, I want them to talk as much as possible. So for those of you who aren't familiar with what happened here, in late November 1941, between the 26th and 29th of November, Vice Admiral Nagumo of the Japanese Imperial Navy set sail with his task force along the 43rd parallel, right behind a big Pacific storm, with his course set for Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, about 4,000 miles away. On the night of December the 6th, they arrived 230 miles north of Pearl Harbor, and the first wave of planes took off at 6:15 a.m. There were 214 planes in the first attack, 50 conventional bombers, 51 dive bombers, and 70 torpedo planes. And one of the big myths about Pearl Harbor is that they showed up about an hour later on radar, way up at the north end of the island here, but were dismissed as a flight of B-17s from California. And I'd love for you guys to ask some questions about that later. Well, as they came up on the attack on Pearl Harbor, flying from south to north, so after they dropped their bombs, could take off right back to their aircraft carriers, there were 185 U.S. ships in Pearl Harbor and thousands of airplanes lined up. And at that time were local men right from Chapel Hill and Pittsburgh and Durham. William Durham was aboard the USS Arizona. Earl Roberts was aboard the USS California. Ernest Porter was on the